My name is Michelle Searcy, and I am the program coordinator for comprehensive school counseling here at the Kentucky Department of Education. And I am so excited that you all are able to join today, especially given that this is National School Counseling Week. So, we have a special program designed just for you, specifically for school counselors in mind. If you want to, you can drop in the chat what school district you're from or the school that you work at. Would love to see who all we have represented today. All right, just real quick before we get into our program, I'm going to do some attendance and housekeeping, and then we'll jump right in. So, first, please keep your camera on so that we can connect to each other while meeting virtually. We know it is really hard to stay connected and stay engaged in a virtual space. So, keeping our camera on definitely helps that. And I don't know if you guys have ever presented virtually. I'm sure at this point you have, but doing virtual presentations is hard when you can't see people's faces and get that interaction. So, really appreciate you turning your cameras on so that we can interact throughout today's meeting. We want you all to stay engaged. So, please use that chat function. I'm going to be asking questions. This is going to be very interactive. So, use that chat function so that we can communicate back and forth with each other. But do remember, we are recording today's session. So what you put in the chat can be seen. So just be mindful of that as well. And then I need you to check real quick to make sure your Zoom name in your little Zoom box has listed your first and last name. And this is for attendance purposes. So if you do not see your first and last name, like maybe your name is listed as Cool Cat Counselor 324. Well, I don't know how to give credit for Cool Cat Counselor, although I am sure you are. You're going to go to the three little dots in your Zoom box, click those dots, and go down to the rename button. And then you can type in your first and last name just to make sure that we have your name for attendance purposes. And then today's going to be a little bit different than other sessions that we've done on our statewide school counselor cadre meetings. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to customize your learning so that at the end of the session, you're going to be able to choose from 5 different sessions and then customize what learning opportunity you would like to finish up your day with. We did have a slight change of schedule because we have someone that was not feeling well today. We actually had a couple people. So we're going to drop in the chat the outline for today that shows what sessions are going to be offered and pasting that in there now. And Dr. Sweeney's going to help me with that throughout the presentation this morning. So, with that being said, want to say happy National School Counseling Week and thank you for all you've done. Thank you really does not encapsulate what it is that you do for our Kentucky students. You know, thank you is something that you might say to someone who hands you your coffee in the morning, or thank you might be if you wave if someone lets you over in line. And those are all great things to be thankful for, but that doesn't cover the services that you do. It just doesn't seem adequate. So last night, I was thinking about all the different roles that school counselors play, your non-traditional roles that you probably don't hear too often, and I wrote them down. So I'm going to read out, they're kind of funny. I'm going to read out some of the things that school counselors do. And if I say something that you relate to, you can drop in the chat, hey, that's me, or that, or just me. Okay, so here's who you are. School counselors are hope dealers, dream believers, fast hallway walking, straight shoot talking, multitasking rock stars. You are a chase a kid down to turn in their scholarship application, tear drying, heartbreak mending, drama referee, life skill expert, sticky note disaster, unapologetic advocate, and a sleuth in the making. You heal, uplift, support, guide, mend, comfort, and encourage. You come to work early and go home late. It's already time for dismissal. I don't think I've even eaten lunch yet. You run towards crisis when everyone else runs away. You are a resource slinging miracle worker. You are a game maker and an environment changer. You are a collaborating ninja and a counseling superstar. So when you introduce yourself, don't ever say, I'm just the school counselor. You hold your head up high, put those shoulders back, and you strongly say, I am the school counselor, because you are the difference to so many of our Kentucky students. So thank you just does not seem nearly enough to appreciate all that it is that you do for our students across the Commonwealth. And I recently went to a training and heard a speaker, his name is Larry Bell, and he said, even on your worst day, you're some students' best hope. And I thought that was so powerful. So even on your worst day, you're some students' best hope in your role as school counselor. Now we're going to hear a special message from our commissioner, wishing you all a happy National School Counseling Week. So take a listen.
Hello, I'm Robin Kinney, Kentucky's Interim Commissioner of Education. As National School Counselors Week is upon us, I want to take a moment to extend my heartfelt appreciation for the exceptional work that Kentucky's school counselors contribute to our educational community. Your dedication to supporting students, fostering their growth, and providing support in both academic and personal matters is truly remarkable. National School Counselors Week is an opportunity to recognize the invaluable role you play in shaping the lives of our students and enhancing the overall well-being of our school environment. Your commitment to creating a positive and inclusive space for learning does not go unnoticed. Your efforts have a lasting impact on the success and development of our students, and for that, I am deeply grateful. This week serves as a reminder to celebrate your accomplishments, acknowledging your tireless efforts, and express gratitude for the positive influence you have on the educational journey of our students throughout the Commonwealth. Your work is instrumental in shaping a brighter future for our community, and I'm proud to have such dedicated professionals on our team. Thank you for your unwavering commitment and hard work. I wish you a wonderful National School Counselors Week filled with the recognition and appreciation you greatly deserve.
Certainly appreciate Robin Kinney sharing with us today and just expanding a little bit on what she sees your role as a school counselor. We really appreciate that. Now we're going to go through our announcements real quick. We have today's agenda, the official one up here at the top, but we dropped in the chat box the one with all of the times that will allow you to pick and choose whatever professional learning component you would like to participate in this afternoon. Few quick things for you to mark on your calendar. Our next statewide school counselor cadre meeting will be on June 4th. Hopefully y'all are out of school by then and we don't have too many snow days that would keep you still working long past June 4th. The June 4th is our next and our last statewide cadre meeting for this school year. And then I know a lot of school counselors celebrate and bring awareness in the month of May for Mental Health Awareness Month. So just know that more resources are going to be coming to you through our newsletter. Our newsletter, if you are not getting those, you have to subscribe in order to get the newsletter. In order to do that, you're going to click on this link that says subscribe to news and alerts, fill out your basic information, and when you hit the next button, it is going to let you choose which newsletters that you would like to receive. And our counseling newsletter is called the Counselor Connection. So once you subscribe to that, you will get those automatically once a month. And those are filled with lots of resources and information you need to be able to do your job. And then lastly, on our newsletter, we have a section for highlights and shout outs from the field. So if you have something really cool going on at your school, a program that you are leading, or someone has done something wonderful for you, or you've seen a colleague do something great, please let me know so that I can drop it in our shout out feature on our Counselor Connection. And then I would also love to come and do some visits and see you all in action. Next, our Spring New School Counselor Academy is about ready to begin. That is for new school counselors with 3 years or less experience. It's a full day training and they are hosted by your individual co-ops, and I come out for a full day face-to-face training. Those are face-to-face because being online virtual for a 7-hour training is entirely too difficult to concentrate and stay plugged in. So reach out to your educational co-op to get signed up for those if you are a new school counselor. And then again, the schedule for the day, which has been dropped in that chat box that you can click on. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Thomas Woods Tucker. He is our Deputy Commissioner of Education and Chief Equity Officer at KDE. And then Dr. Damian Sweeney, who's our Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. They wanted to come today to bring greetings to all of you. And fellas, I appreciate you being on with us today, and I will give you the floor.
Her pleasure. Dr. Tucker, you're muted.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Cersei, and of course, everyone for being here. Now, Dr. Cersei, you didn't tell me how many minutes I had to pontificate to talk about and celebrate some of our most important people in the education field, and that's our school counselors.
You can have as much time as you want, sir.
Wow, that's kind of dangerous, handing that over to a former retired superintendent and grandson of a Baptist minister. So, and especially having an opportunity to brag about our hope dealers. But before I get started, I want to give greetings to you all on behalf of the Kentucky Board of Education and all of the staff here at KDE. You heard from Interim Commissioner Kinney in her welcome to you, but I certainly want to take time to give you greetings from the staff here and really across the great Commonwealth for the great work that you do. I was thinking I spent some time last night just thinking about some comments, real brief comments that I would make here. And I thought about the opportunities that you all provide, that whole list that Dr. Cersei read off. And you all do those things, but I'm thinking about the opportunities, the educational opportunities you give in the realm of diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and culturally sustaining practices. You do this to provide each student academic success, well-being, and of course, resiliency, or what we call grit. And you've been doing this for a while. We probably didn't give them those beautiful names, but you've been doing this well before it became in vogue. And you've also, during my time here in the agency, I am so proud of the things that you've been able to impart, not only on students, but also on staff. And I'm sure you all will have some sessions today where you talk about not only student well-being, but also staff well-being, because it's important that we recognize, show respect, and utilize each student and each staff member's strengths, their experiences, and what we call funds of knowledge. Dr. Sweeney likes to talk about funds of knowledge, and I like to turn that into a metaphor. These funds of knowledge are things that are in our backpack. There are things that have been put in our suitcases for success later on by our wonderful counselors, our teachers, and our parents to help us be successful. So I love the fact that we are focusing on these funds of knowledge rather than weaknesses that our students have. And I tell you what, our school counselors have always done that. And one trait that Dr. Cersei mentioned was being hope dealers. And that's important, and that's what you do. But I also want to add, Dr. Cersei, I want to add technology guru when we talk about our school counselors. I'm going to take you all the way back to my junior year in high school. My high school principals was very close to our counselor, and my counselor's name was W.L. Brantley, back in my small hamlet in Cotton Plant, Arkansas. And the principal recognized the power that a counselor, Mr. Smith was my principal, he recognized the power and the influence that a counselor could have. And he knew that this counselor, Mr. Brantley, just wasn't, and I'll say just wasn't someone that will take attendance, do testing, act as an assistant principal. He knew the special relationships and that power, the superpower that this counselor had in Mr. Brantley in influencing the lives of kids. Mr. Brantley introduced me to Lisa. I will buy lunch to anyone here who knew or heard of Lisa. So if you know what Lisa is, we're going to give you, Dr. Sweeney, can we give folks 30 seconds to drop that in the chat box. And no, Lisa was not my girlfriend. It was not someone he was trying to set me up with. Anyone, Dr. Sweeney, anyone guessing who Lisa was?
Not yet, not yet.
Okay, and being a great teacher, I know the importance of wait time. Now, Dr. Cersei, I'm not going to wait 20 or 30 minutes for a response, but I'll wait another 15 seconds. But I also know the importance of giving lead-ins and clues to help students get that gray matter going. It was a piece of technology. No. Any guesses yet?
Not yet. I think folks are trying to make sure they're signed in and have all their ducks in a row.
Okay. And you,
Or we're trying to Google it, Dr. Tucker.
or
We're
they're trying to
Googling it
Google it.
try to find out what that actually is.
Okay. Well, let me tell you who Lisa was. Lisa was the first computer produced by Apple in 1983. And Mr. Brantley would bring me to his office and he said to me, this is the future of work. This is the future of school. And that meant a lot for me, in that I'm this little country boy who lived in the projects. And what Mr. Brantley said to me, he said, just because you live in the projects doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. And I replied to him, I said, you know what, Mr. Brantley? I said, just about all of us live in the projects. And he said, again, it doesn't matter. That's not going to dictate your future success. But he shared with me, he said, I see something special in you, and you're going to be great. And you're going to be this awesome educator. And because of Mr. Brantley, I stand here today as a two-time National Superintendent of the Year. And I stand here equally important, working with you as the Deputy Commissioner and Chief Equity Officer. So I will now close by saying to each one of you, continue dealing in hope in children. Continue introducing your children to technologies of the future. Continue to believe in all of your students. You've always done it. You've continued to believe in each student. And I know that we feel from time to time that we're under siege, and in a sense we are, but please, please know that you're not in this alone. Thank you. And I'll now turn it over to Dr. Sweeney.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think those stories can re-inspire us to know that, you know, the little things that we say, the little nudges that we make for students go a long, long way. So one other term that I would like to add to your plate is lifesavers. You are lifesavers. You are saving lives in Kentucky with your work, and we couldn't be more thankful for that. You see on your screen several things that we're extremely proud of. I think sometimes people try and box diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging in, and you see that it is way more than folks often realize. So we are working on ensuring that all students have access to Kentucky academic standards that are inclusive. We are working on educator well-being tools. We realize that you and your colleagues, even your school leaders and district leaders, are suffering right now. We know that there's a mental health crisis in the country, and that's not just a youth mental health crisis. We know that just on our last iteration of the Kentucky Working Conditions Survey, only 36% of our educators felt good about their well-being. We're working on graduation requirements and individual learning plan guidance so that you have free, accessible lesson plans that you can use in Tier 1 when you go in and you do your school counseling lessons. You now hopefully realize that no student in Kentucky, no family in Kentucky will pay more than $12 for an advanced placement exam this year. So we're really trying to support that. We are fighting to continue that effort in the future with the budget bill in Kentucky. We ensured that school counselors would be part of something called the Equity Playbook. You all, You can hear it here first. There's no other project in Kentucky that has closed gaps like the Equity Playbook. We're seeing our Equity Playbook schools that opted into the Equity Playbook with school leaders, school counselors, instructional coaches, and teachers. They're outperforming other schools in science, reading, and math. And then students are also improving their behavior. So also that school culture and climate is improved.
And Dr. Sweeney and Dr. Searcy, how much money have we saved students and parents in tuition vis-a-vis AP exams?
$30 million. $30 million saved in the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Each year.
So we're,
That's each year.
yes, each year. Yes, very good point. We've got we've got 18 different calming spaces throughout our state. We are so blessed to have our cooperatives, our regional educational cooperatives that have worked hard to put together a social and emotional learning implementation guide and framework for you, your school leaders and your teachers, that will be launched this spring. Michelle, as she mentioned earlier, she's going around to each and every region of our state doing an early graduation. A new school counselor academy. We also have launched a new early graduation program this year as well. We love these school counselor cadres, and we love that it's during a week that's all about you. So we will continue that. We've got one more in June. We've got the school-based mental health professional use of time survey that really helps showcase the work that you do and how you spend your time. It also is another lever that we can pull in order to advocate for you and you doing appropriate roles. We are launching new modules with KET and University of Louisville on social and emotional learning, restorative practices, fostering equity, school counseling, and more. And from the jump, we have always said that the arts, that's a universal language we can all come together on. And so we are fortunate and blessed to have been able to provide Governor School for the Arts with a second campus for the last 3 summers. We're working on guidance on asset-based language. So we're using terms like neurodiversity and multilingual learners instead of special education students and what is the term? And English language learners, right? Because those are deficit-based terms. So we're looking at using neurodiverse, which is asset-based. We're looking at using that emerging bilingual or multilingual learner as well. All right, so that's just a few things that we're trying to do in our office. Hopefully you realize now that DEIB is not something that you can just put in a box, but that is something that's expansive and that's inclusive of you. So as I finish up, I just want to reiterate how we started and tell you that you are very special to us. We think about you every single day, and we are planning on ways to continue advocating for you. So happy National School Counseling Week, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you.
And Michelle, because I'm so excited, and I told you it would be hard for me to contain myself, but I certainly also want to say to our wonderful educators, our wonderful friends here, and Damien is very modest. We also were able to, for 2 straight years, increase the number of students in the Governor's Scholars Program, 40 new students each year, with an intentionality to bring in more students from impoverished backgrounds and more students of color. So I'm unapologetic in being able to do that. Thank you for your recommendations. And you'll hear Michelle, Dr. Searcy, is it today or later on in the week, you'll give a more thorough update on the results from our Equity Playbook schools and school districts. Is that later on in the week?
Yes, that will be on Thursday with our School Counselor Advisory Board.
Okay, so folks, stay tuned for that. Thank you, and God bless you.
Dr. Tucker, Dr. Sweeney, thank you so much for joining in today. Dr. Tucker, I know you probably didn't see this, but in the chat box, someone said your story actually gave them chills. So it was very inspiring to hear how a school counselor impacted your life.
Oh, well, thank you. So let's continue to tell those beautiful stories and never say you're just a counselor. You are a lifesaver. As Dr. Sweeney said, you improve and save lives every day. So again, thank you, and we'll see you a little later.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, you guys, just like we just heard Dr. Tucker and Dr. Sweeney do about educating about all of the different roles that in the work that's being done in our DEIB department, we want you guys to be able to do that same thing with your department because you have such a big impact on students. So we are going to take some time and we are going to be talking about how to navigate growth in the school counselor's role in advocacy in Kentucky. Now, anyone that knows me knows that I can be long-winded. So I have to get off at 10 so that we stay on track and you can hear from our next speaker. So I'm going to be looking at my phone quite frequently. Rachel, I see you first in my little box. Love seeing your smiling face. If I get close, if you can just let me know that we need to move on. And y'all, if we don't get through all of it, we'll make sure that we pick it up. All right, so we're going to talk about advocacy within our school counseling profession, because this is one of the major components of National School Counseling Week, is learning how to properly advocate for our role, educate others about the work that school counselors are doing, but then also to celebrate everything that you do in our schools. So let's talk about North Star alignment. When we think about the North Star, throughout history, the North Star has guided people through difficult situations. It helps to keep people on track. When they get lost, it pulls them back into the center so that they can refocus on whatever journey is ahead. As school counselors, our North Star is these ASCA standards. So ASCA standards, there's 3 of them that I'm just going to point out. We don't have time to go through them, but I do want you to know how to find them when you go on ASCA's websites, because they do get updated quite frequently. As professional school counselors, it is really important that we review these on a regular basis, that we're looking at our ethical codes, we're looking at our professional standards, and then we're also looking at our mindsets and behaviors for students. Oftentimes, people outside of the school counseling realm, they don't always understand that just like every other curriculum and content area that's out there, we have standards too that we work with students on. And the standards that we teach students not only help them be successful in school, but they help them be successful in life. So it is life-giving work that we're doing with our students. So you're going to get a copy of this presentation, and when you click on this link here, it's going to take you directly to ASCA's website. Hey, Rachel, can you see my screen with the ASCA's website? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can?
I can't see it.
Okay, let me reshare. What about now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, wonderful. So if you go to ASCA's website, now you can access this whether you're a member or not, although we are going to talk about professional memberships here in just a little bit. If you scroll down, these boxes up here at the top will constantly change based upon different things that are going on in our world, and different resources that are going to be helpful to you as a school counselor. But if you scroll down here, always in the bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see a green box. And in that green box, it's going to have our ASCA ethical standards for school counselors, our professional standards and competencies, and then our students' mindsets and behaviors. It also has standards for school counselor prep programs. So if you have school counselors in training, that might be beneficial to them. But these are the big 3 for us as school counselors. Let me go back over to our slideshow. Okay, so those are the let me stop that. I apologize. I clicked on the link again. So when we think about our ASCA standards, specifically on advocacy, since that's what we're talking about today, we're going to look at their ethical standards. And in our ethical standards, it mentions the word advocate over 30 times throughout our ethical standards. So that tells us that it is a really important part of our roles and responsibilities as school counselors. And you all do this every day. You know how important it is. But there are some that I want to bring light to. So when we talk about in the A6 component of our ethical standards, it specifically mentions on multiple occasions that we are to advocate for marginalized populations, students that are bullied or bullying, harassment, bias and hate incidents, and then also it talks about student records and data. So make sure that when you go back today, this is a 3-hour session, so it's not, we're not going to be able to dig in as deep. But when you go back later on today or in the week, make sure you go back and look at our ethical standards and how it talks about the need for us to be advocates, especially in those areas. Now, when we look at our school counseling competencies, which is that second document, it talks about advocacy being a professional foundation. So it is what our profession is built upon. And we talk about advocating for a school counselor program use of time. Dr. Sweeney talked about that a little bit. If you're not keeping your time and tracking your time as a school counselor and you need help with that, let me know. I would be more than happy to walk through some options with you. But keeping track of our counseling time and then sharing those results with others is extremely beneficial. Most of our principals or leaders in education have not been a counselor, so they do not know the role that you play, and they don't understand the breadth of responsibility and impact you can have on our students. So being able to use that use of time to help navigate those conversations are extremely important. And then also making sure they align with what ASCA says we are supposed to be doing. But then it also aligns with our Kentucky framework for school counselors. Dr. Sweeney, can you drop that link into the chat for me?
Sure thing.
Thank you. So the Kentucky framework for school counselors was built for you. It was designed and put together for you. And we pulled counselors from all across the state to do this work to make sure that it was very comprehensive in scope and that it aligned with ASCA standards. So Dr. Sweeney's dropping that in the link, but I also want to walk you through just a couple of components for time's sake that will be helpful to you. So first is the contents. You're going to see that it breaks it out really into 4 different practices and chunks this work into 4 practices. This tool not only helps you in your work day to day as a school counselor, it's that North Star. It's one of our North Star documents that guides our work. But it also is developed for you to use as an advocacy tool. You can take this with your principal when you have meetings with them, and you can lay out what you're supposed to be doing as it relates to Kentucky law and how that you are supposed to be evaluated and the roles and responsibilities for you. So the first thing that I want to point out is on page 5, and that's defining a school counselor. Let me move my little button up here so I can get to it quickly. So I'm going to jump right to page 5, and I want you to take a second. This is the official definition of a Kentucky school counselor. When we developed this definition, there were quite a few of us in a room, and KDE gave us, I want to say half a day, maybe 6 hours to come up with a definition. And I thought, this is insane. Like, we do not need that much time to come up with a definition. Y'all, we needed that much time to come up with a definition because everyone had their own version and everyone had their own interpretation of what a school counselor is. We cannot advocate for our role if we're not using common language and understand what our role truly is supposed to be in the state of Kentucky. So I want to give you 20 seconds to read this and drop in the chat. Remember, I want this to be interactive. Drop in the chat some words that stood out to you as you were reading the definition. Yes, whole child. We work on the whole child. It is comprehensive and data informed. So when we're making our comprehensive counseling plans, we're using data to inform our decisions. We are focusing on diversity. We have targeted and universal components of our comprehensive plan. Mental health professional, let's talk about that. Like, that's one of the big things that we got hung up on when we were trying to develop this definition, was a mental health professional. We had people that said school counselors are not mental health professionals, and others that viewed themselves as mental health professionals. So let me tell y'all this, when you go to get your counseling degree, you're going through your program. Whether you're going to get your LPCC, which is your licensed professional clinical counseling degree, LPCA actually, or you're getting your school counselor degree. You have the same foundational classes, but there comes a point where you have to decide, do I want to go to the certification route and work in schools, or do I want to go in the licensure route and work in private practice or providing long-term counseling support? We all have the same foundational training. It's when we split, we start to learn things like, for school counseling, you're learning school law, how to provide universal and targeted supports in a school setting, components of education that you are going to need to work within a school. Licensure route, you're going to be learning things like billing, how to look at long-term plans. Our plans for mental health supports are not long-term, they're short-term. So those are just a few of the differences. So knowing our definition is the foundation of where we need to start. But then I'm going to jump to page 38, and on the context, you will be able to see this, but I'm jumping right into leadership and advocacy. So when you go to the leadership and advocacy section on the Kentucky Framework of Best Practices for School Counselor, you can scroll down and you're going to see the practice elements and indicators in your work as a leader and as an advocate within your school. Not only does it give you indicators, but it's also going to give you sample evidence that you can use during observation visits. If your principal is not observing you in action, that is a great advocacy area. Like, invite them in to watch one of your counseling lessons. Invite them in to a small group. Invite them in to see you train or work with a group of teachers in a PLC meeting. Invite them in and let them see the role that you do, because I promise you they do not understand the scope. So this is a really helpful document for you as you're working towards advocacy in the state. Now I'm going to switch back. Please make sure you go back and look at that. Judy, yes, I remember debating that quite well. That word was, we got hung up there. So now we're going to talk about student advocacy. Now this is something we do very well as school counselors, and we're super comfortable in the student advocacy space. This means that we step up and stand in and speak up for individual students or group of students. When we think about advocacy, this is what we think of most often. It is very student-centered, and we are advocating to create supporting and learning environments and equal opportunities for our students, but not just in the classroom. So we're advocating for students to have equal opportunities and high rigorous learning in the classroom, but then also beyond. When I say beyond, someone drop in the chat, or a couple people, what are ways that we advocate for students outside of the school setting? What about do we advocate for students to have a safe living space? Absolutely. Family engagement meetings, yes, providing needs at home. We're making sure that their basic needs are met. That may be things like working with local food pantries to make sure that families have the food that they need, resources that they need. Yes, homelessness, partners with community stakeholders. Thank you guys for jumping in. All the things. So a couple of ways we advocate: by eliminating barriers. We heard Dr. Sweeney and Dr. Tucker talking about eliminating barriers in student development, creating opportunities for all students to learn, ensuring that we have access to quality school curriculum, and then collaborating with folks both inside and outside. That really ties up nicely with promoting positive systemic changes in school. So this is advocating for students, but then looking at how do we advocate for systems that support our students. And this is where sometimes it gets a little sticky and uncomfortable, but this is where the rubber meets the road and we make the most impact when we start looking at systems. So when we're talking about systems, we're wanting to make sure that our policies and procedures are both equitable and they're inclusive. And so that means that we have to step back, look at data, listen to student and family voices, and try to figure out what opportunities are closed off for certain groups of students. This is where we're really looking for students that are under or over represented or we call that disproportional, and we're using our voices to drive that work within our schools. So some examples that I have listed here is maybe looking at advanced learning opportunities and the enrollment policies that surround that. Does your advanced learning opportunity enrollment match your student demographic? Or is it homogeneous? So we want to make sure that our advanced learning spaces are diverse and that we are representing and giving opportunities to each of our students in our schools. And a lot of times that hangup comes from our policies. So it's easy to argue against opinion, right? You can jump on social media and you can get anyone to argue with you about anything. You can say the sun comes out during the day and the moon comes out at night, and someone's going to argue with you. It's much harder to argue against data, to push back against data. So in that opening bit, I talked about how school counselors are data sleuths. Like, we have to be able to dig into the data with intentionality to look for disproportionality so that we can start peeling back the layers to figure out why. Are there systems issues, policies issues that are making opportunities inequitable for our students? And this is something that school counselors are fantastic at doing. We sometimes can get so caught up in the quantitative data that other people miss the qualitative data. But this is where we know, this is where our heart is. The qualitative data is the stories behind the experiences. And school counselors, you'll often hear, are the heart of the school. And this is why, is because you are being intentional about qualitative data. So one tool I want to give you is on empathy interviews. And if you've not done empathy interviews, I highly encourage it. I'm going to click on this to show you, but then I'm also going to drop it in the link, and you are going to get a copy of today's presentation at the end. So you will have this as well. Let me copy this link so you can take a look at it with me, and I'll drop it in the chat. So empathy interviews is a systemic way, an intentional way to get the voices of our students and families at the margin. Now, this does not just have to be with students and families. You can also do this with teachers and community members. But empathy interviews, it does take some planning to do. You're sitting one-on-one and you're giving open-ended questions to whomever it is that you're interviewing. So once you find those data components, let's say that you have a group of students that are missing a lot of school. Their absences are super high. So you start digging into the data to see where's that disproportionality, where the most of your absences coming from. And then you can set up empathy interviews one-on-one to talk about why. One of the things you do have to be aware of, though, for empathy interviews, I want to bring your attention to this when you're thinking about who's going to lead empathy interviews. First, you want to think about the relationship. If you're having a one-on-one conversation and trying to get stories of someone's experiences, you have to make sure that whoever is interviewing them, they have a relationship with them. They have a positive relationship with them. Oftentimes, this is going to be the school counselor. You all are perfect for this role. Power dynamics, you want to really be thoughtful about power dynamics, how race, position, age, and gender might play out in an empathy interview. And you want to deliberately reduce harm. So let's say that we're working with a group of students and we're doing empathy interviews on behavior. It's probably not going to be the best idea to have the assistant principal leading those conversations or doing those empathy interviews. We want students and families to be able to openly share their experiences in a safe and comfortable space. As always, being mindful of language needs and being inclusive with our language, and then the community. If you keep scrolling here, it's going to tell you how to conduct empathy interviews. If you've never done this, I want to offer up a challenge. Conduct some empathy interviews, a handful before spring break. Look at some data points. Like, you can even look at students that are referred to see you as the school counselor. Go back to your data and see which students are coming to see me or being referred to me and which ones are not. Find the which ones that are not and conduct a couple of empathy interviews to try to dig in to figure out why. And essentially, you're saying, tell me about a time when. Tell me about it the last time they're open-ended questions, and then you do follow-up questions like, tell me more. Why do you think that is? What are you feeling? And it'll give you more resources here that you can kind of dig into. But I encourage you, if you have not done empathy interviews before, to go back to those because it is exceptionally powerful. Okay, so now we've talked about student and systems advocacy, and now we're going to move into advocating for ourselves. And when I say that, sometimes people have a couple of different feelings. One, they feel like they don't want to talk about advocacy for ourselves because that sounds selfish. Like there's so much to advocate for. Can I really advocate for myself? Is that really a part of today's session? And I'm going to say this is the most important part of today's session is learning how to advocate for ourselves without us feeling guilty about it. So when we talk about self-advocacy, this is the most difficult part as a school counselor. We want to advocate for everyone else because we see the need, but all too often we don't see our own needs being equally as important as advocating for others. So this isn't just about, self-care. That's not what this is about. This is about making sure that you're able to communicate and negotiate your needs and your rights as a human being. So I'm going to give you some strategies. We'll get back to the little girl on the left here in just a second. But the first strategy is setting a healthy boundary. Y'all, this job, as you know, could go on 24 hours a day. There are student needs that happen all through the day and all through the night. And during the pandemic, what we did is we were so desperate to make connections with families and to reach out with families that we were available 24/7. We gave families our cell phone numbers. We were checking Google, whatever Google platform you have, Google Classroom for messages. We were answering emails. Everyone's schedules were thrown off. So we were grabbing anyone we could when they reached out. And so that created almost a dependency where people now think that they have access to you 24/7. You cannot keep up with 24/7 supports. We are seeing an exceptionally high rate of counselors burning out and leaving the profession. And healthy boundaries is where it starts. If you work late on a Tuesday, you need to try to go home on time Wednesday and Thursday. We all have, the beginning of the school, the end of the school year, and around testing, unfortunately, school counselors get slammed. But you can't stay at school every night until 7, 8 o'clock and then go home and there's nothing left of yourself for you or your family. I recently saw where the average American worker only gets 3 to 4 hours with their family during the work week. If you only get 3 or 4 hours with your family during the work week, that is for you and your family. Granted, if it's an emergency, if it's life or death, absolutely. But we need to start using our email reminders, our out of office. If we're not in office, or have it to set at 5 o'clock or whatever time you end your workday, that says, no, that is not right, Rachel. We are not ending our workday at 10. Oh, you're telling me I have 10 minutes. I thought she was telling me she ends her workday at 10. Okay, setting those healthy boundaries and saying no, but put those email reminders on your phone so that when they try to email you or text you, you're out of office at that time. If this is an emergency, please contact these numbers and put your emergency numbers in your email reply. Turn off your email notifications from your phone. Even if they don't ding constantly, looking down at that email and seeing that you have 362 emails waiting for you to read causes anxiety and you're not able to relax at the end of the day. Learn to say no. Saying no to someone means saying yes to you. Y'all, you can be replaced as a school counselor in a heartbeat. It's a job. It's an important job, but it's a job. It's a profession. They will replace you. You can never be replaced as a husband or a wife, a son or daughter, a mom or dad. Like, they can't replace you at home. They will replace you at work. Remember to say no. You don't have to say yes to every opportunity. If someone comes to you and they ask you to lead something, say, oh, that sounds like a great idea. Here are the other things I'm currently leading. Which one do you think should fall off so that I can do this one? Because I'm not going to be able to pick them both up. Which one's more important? You're going to be able to learn those people around you and what language to use. But saying no is a universal language that we all have to get a little more comfortable with. Any other profession, you is not on call 24/7, 365 days a year. At your doctor's office, they will have an on-call doctor for emergencies, but you cannot call your doctor at 8, 9 o'clock at night and ask to speak to them because you're not feeling well. It will go to the on-call doctor, or they'll tell you to call back during regular business hours. Unless it's an emergency, step away, let your mind and body rejuvenate and heal so that you are ready to give it your all the next day and you don't burn out by the end of the school year. And then lastly, learn to use your calendar. Your calendar is one of the best advocacy tools that you have. If you're looking at your calendar and it's blank, that's a problem. Start using your calendar to list what it is you're doing. I'm doing individual interventions from 9 to 10. I'm doing classroom counseling lessons from 11 to 12 on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm doing small groups on Tuesday, Thursday from this time. I'm meeting with teachers and PLCs during this time. Put it in your calendar and share that calendar with your administrator so they know where you're at, what you're doing. This is part of helping them to better understand your role as a school counselor. And then sharing your professional wins with other people. That's not always easy, but it's important. It's not bragging. It's helping people know the impact that you have as a school counselor. Okay, so now we're going to move into professional advocacy. Actually, let's stop for a second. In the chat, tell me something that you do for personal advocacy. Something that you do to protect your space and your mental well-being and your personal advocacy. Someone says, I took email off my phone several years ago and it's a life changer. Absolutely. If it's an emergency, somebody can text you and you can go in and log in a different way. Oh, Judy, that's okay. No email at all on the phone. Leave with my twins at the end of the school day. Yeah. I hear some people, I was at a training, I don't even remember where it was, but the counselor said that symbolically, when she drives into her driveway, she takes off her lanyard and she puts her lanyard in her car. That symbolically tells her, work me is now sitting out in the car. I'll pick that back up tomorrow when I go get in my car to go to work. Now, this is me. This is my family's version of me. And that it's like taking off a hat and putting on another one. And sometimes we need those symbolic reminders so that we don't get sucked back in. Y'all, I am the worst at personal advocacy. And in my current role, my school counselors would remind me of that all the time. They said I could preach it real good, but I was terrible at following my own advice. Find something that helps you step away and be with your family and have that you time. Ooh, I like that one. Set gym class for right after school, a couple days a week. So that way they leave on time and they get their workout in. Okay, thank you guys. Erin, I'm bad at self-advocacy too. You are not alone. So now we know what we need to work on. Thank you, Rachel. All right, so one of the things that we can do for professional advocacy, biggest thing, y'all, we got to change our title. I can't tell you how many times I go out and I still see people have guidance counselor on their email line or on their door to their school, or it's written on their website. We have to be consistent in our role as professional school counselors. If we don't know what to call ourselves, how do we expect anybody else to? We have to be on the same playing field. I often tell this story where my daughter had bought a blow up canoe and she was in this canoe and her brother wanted to hop in with her. And so they start rowing on the canoe, but they're not succinct. They're not going in the same direction and they're just spinning around and they start fighting. And eventually she kicks him out of the canoe because he's not rowing in the same direction as her. And so she kicks him out, and then her little friend gets in. And her friend paddle at the same speed, at the same pace, go in the same direction. And within a minute or two, they're all the way down the lake. Yeah, we're not getting anywhere because we're not rowing in the same direction. We have to be on par with people. So changing our title is super important. And it helps to make sure people understand our competency and professional perception. I have linked in here it's actual research that was done on people's perception if you use the word guidance counselor versus school counselor. So consistency matters. So write out when we get off today. Check your email signature line, make sure it says school counselor. Check your website, make sure it says school counselor. And your social media platforms. It's the easiest thing we can do to advocate for our role this week during National School Counseling Week. And then you can work with district personnel to make sure that your titles that was really country. Your titles match your state licensure and the Kentucky Framework of Best Practices for School Counselors. Both of those key documents in the state of Kentucky use the word school counselor. They do not use the word guidance counselor. All right. I am going to have to speed it. I do want to show you guys a few things. So I want to get to these professional organizations. Being a part of a professional organization gives you a lot of benefits. One, the stronger we are in numbers in professional organizations, the more voice they have when they're trying to advocate for your role, especially as we think of legislative components. And so for example, Kentucky School Counseling Association, they have a legislative day coming up. If that is something you're interested in, you can reach out to KSCA and they will give that to you. But they also have PD opportunities that are developed just for school counselors. All of our organizations listed here, ASCA, KSCA, and KCA, they also provide a shared professional identity, and they give us standards of practice, back to that North Star alignment again. So if you're not a member of professional organizations, there's a really good reason why you should be. But I promised that I would show this. So I want to show you a video that KSCA made for all of you all for National School Counseling Week. So I do want to make sure that I show that to you real quick.
Guess what time it is? It's National School Counselor Week! Are you ready to learn about Kentucky's wonderful school counselors? Then let's go! We're school counselors. We do more than just schedule classes. We're school counselors. Most of us have master's degrees or higher from long nights of graduate school.
We're school counselors. We create comprehensive school counseling programs designed for all of you.
We're school counselors. Please don't call us guidance counselors. That term hasn't been used since like 1990.
We're school counselors. Our services prevent bigger problems from arising.
We're school counselors. We love partnering with families and do so as much as we can.
We're school counselors. We are the link between students, teachers, parents, and administrators.
We're school counselors. Our days may be busy, but our hearts are full.
We are school counselors. 60% of our days should be spent directly working with students.
We're school counselors. We are the only mental health professionals tasked with serving all students in Kentucky schools.
We're school counselors, but we still think about our students at night.
We are school counselors. We design lessons, run small groups, meet with stakeholders, and in our spare time, we advocate for our profession.
We're school counselors. When thinking about preventing school violence, we're the missing piece to the puzzle.
We're school counselors. For many students, we are someone they can trust.
We're school counselors. We follow a national code of ethics
that always puts students' best interests at heart.
We're school counselors, the voice for the voiceless and those who feel alone.
We're school counselors, and we collaborate with teachers.
We're school counselors. We communicate with parents.
We're school counselors. We advise administrators. We're school counselors, and most importantly, we dedicate our lives to the most important thing, you, all of Kentucky's students.
All of you.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
I hope you were able to take some time and stretch your legs a little bit and take care of your own needs. I loved in the chat box, we already had someone that sent an email to their superintendent asking to have their title changed, which is super cool. All right, when you come back in, if you want to go on and turn your camera back on, this is the part of today's presentation I'm super excited about. But before I introduce our next speaker, I do want to let you guys know while she is speaking, I am going to grab this entire slide presentation and I'm going to put it in the chat box so that you have access to all of the links, all of the PDFs, everything that we've talked about here today. But then also, you'll be able to go back and review the components that we didn't get to hit on. And if interested, let me know. And I can always do a longer virtual session and a standalone training for folks if there's interest there. All right, so up next, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Laura Donnelly. Dr. Donnelly has been a school counselor for many, many years, and she was a lead counselor in her district at Jefferson County Public Schools. She also has other passions that have developed since she's been a school counselor, and one of those is specifically on helping administrators, counselors, APs, principals, school leaders have a healthier balance and a healthier lifestyle. And how do we do that sustainably? She has always been the most requested speaker that I've ever had before, so I am super excited to be able to have her on with us today. Dr. Donnelly, are you with us?
I am here.
Wonderful. I am going to stop sharing so that Dr. Donnelly can share her screen. And just want to publicly thank you for being on today. She is a very busy woman as she has started her own business now where she comes to school districts and works with lots of leaders in education on wellness and healthy balances and all the good things that we know are important to our educational sphere. So Dr. Donnelly, I will turn the mic over to you and stop sharing my screen so you can share yours.
All right. Hello, hello. I am so grateful to be able to be here with you all today, and thank you for asking me to be here, Dr. Searcy. But this presentation all kind of developed a few years ago. Dr. Sweeney and his team from the Kentucky Department of Education came to the school that I was working at the time, Kenwood Elementary, and they were doing a walkthrough and just kind of seeing all of the great things that we had going on. And of course, when somebody comes to your school, you want to showcase all the great things that you're doing, right? So we had slide decks that were talking about all of these really amazing things and the work that we were doing. And after we were finished presenting, Dr. Sweeney pulled me to the side. I'll never forget this. And he said, he just complimented, like, I see your name threaded throughout each of these presentations. It's like you have a hand in every single thing that's happening in the building, which lots of us do as counselors, right? Because we do it all. But he asked me this question: who supports you? And when he asked that, it kind of stopped me in my tracks, because I hadn't thought about, as a counselor, how is this sustainable with all of the things that we're doing every single day, the trauma that we're picking up, the secondary trauma, in addition to the administrative responsibilities. This is a tough job. So I'm so grateful to be here for National School Counseling Week, to be able to share some of the things that I did. Hopefully they will help support you as well. All right. Sorry, let me get navigating here. Okay, before we begin, I know this is a loaded question, but I would love for you to drop in the chat. It can be one word, it can be a full sentence, whatever you want it to be. What is the biggest challenge you're facing with your workload right now? Lots of time. Only one of me. Other duties as assigned. Only one of me. Yes. Okay, so I can relate to all of that, and we are going to talk about time and some ways that we can implement things for ourselves that help with time. But I was also the only counselor out at Kenwood. We had just shy of 600 students, and it was just me. So I completely understand that, and hopefully we're going to focus on some things that can really help. So there are going to be some strategies that we're going to practice. Not because I don't think that you already know how to do them. Sometimes we are so out of touch with the things that we need the most that we just need a gentle reminder. So I'm going to say thank you in advance for playing along with me as we go through the presentation. But also, as you're listening to this, I just want you to think about how some of this information you can also share with your staff. We know that I think we hear about teacher burnout all the time. It's everywhere. There are books about it. But the truth is, we know it's happening. And if teachers are burned out, if we're feeling burned out, teachers are feeling burned out, it's going to make it to the desk of the students, which gives us more work to do, right? So thinking about how you can also share some of this with your staff. The severity of the issues, yes. Yes, yes, and yes. So I'm Laura Donnelly. I am currently a burnout consultant and coach. I'm doing a lot of consulting work right now, which I'm very grateful to do. Not all with burnout, but a lot of it is. I just want to share a little bit about who I am. I taught at the same school, or I was in the same school for 13 years. I taught kids with emotional behavior disorders for 3, and then I was a counselor for 10. And I really just started focusing on burnout with my staff. And then I noticed I was supporting a lot of colleagues. So I got the opportunity to co-author a book, and it will be released in August, which is what this picture is down here. ASCD is hopefully releasing it in August of this year because this has become a lot of my passion. There are some statistics that we're going to talk about today, but very few, because I don't know that we need to see the numbers to know that this exists. I will say I've become really passionate about this because there's so much on teacher burnout, but there's nothing about administrator burnout, right? And administrators have so many responsibilities in addition to all of the other things that we deal with in schools. So this is my new role, is wanting to support. Up here, this is my daughter. She is such a joy to be around. She learned how to ride her bike this summer. And 2 weeks later, I'm an avid cyclist. So I was in Perry County and Hazard doing a mountain bike race. And it was 2 weeks after she learned how to ride her bike, and she asked if she could join the kids race. And I was like, I'm not sure that's such a good idea. But she did it. And she did the whole thing. They let me ride beside her because it was her first time, and she did it all in a Wonder Woman costume. So she is my idol. So much joy, independence, and I just love getting to be her mom. And then this is my first baby, Bo. Hopefully he does not act up while we're in this, because I think he's lost his hearing. My parents say it's selective, not really sure. But hopefully he is calm in the background. All right, so here's some of those stats that we probably don't need to see, but I thought this was interesting. And honestly, I felt like this was probably a low number. The statistics say 89% of school counselors reported feelings of burnout, mostly due to administrative responsibilities. And I thought it was interesting that perfectionism was one thing that they cited specifically being negatively related. I am a recovering perfectionist. I like to do things really well. And I have a feeling a lot of you, because your counselors, also like to do things really well. But the more that we try to get things perfect, the more it increases our burnout. So learning to know, when is it good enough? When can I walk away from this? And then self-esteem was positively related, and having those ability to for coping skills, things like that, significantly decreases our experiences of burnout. Yes, Sabrina, you missed the mountain bike race. All right, before we get started, I know everybody has tons of things to do. There's so many emails you could probably respond to, and if you have to take a call or whatever for an emergency, I get it. But before we get started, I just want everybody to set an intention. How is it that you want to show up for yourself during this time? Is it that you just want to be present? Do you just want to be open? Whatever it is, just go ahead and set your intention. All right, here's the outline of our session. I got to listen to part of Dr. Searcy's presentation at the end, and great minds think alike. I don't think you can talk about boundaries enough, so I'm still going to talk about them a little bit. Transforming habits, using our network, asking for help when you need it, focusing on the good, and ending our day with intention. All right, setting healthy boundaries. So she talked a little bit about choosing an end time, like not working till 10 o'clock, right? Choosing an end time to the workday for me meant on days that I have my daughter and I need to pick her up, there was a certain time that I had to be out of the building. So that was a hard stop for me. There were other days where I didn't have her and I could stay until 10 o'clock if I wanted to, but that wasn't healthy for me. So I had to choose an end time that worked for me so that I could say, this is it and I'm gone. Do not disturb was a huge game changer for me on my phone. My daughter was probably, her name's MK. My MK was probably 3. And she was in the bathtub and we had a really tricky parent situation, and a teacher was texting me over and over and over because she was in full on panic mode. The parents were asking her some pretty off the wall questions and she just needed help. And so MK's in the bathtub. She keeps saying, mommy, mommy, mommy. I hear her, but I'm really worried about responding to this teacher because I know she needs my help. And so I hear her, and finally she just screams my name and she says, mommy. And it was in that moment that I realized, yes, this teacher needed my support, but I was completely ignoring and not present with my daughter. So after that, I had to choose some specific times that I considered sacred. And for me, bath time was one of those, and dinner was one of those, and bedtime. During that time, I would put my phone on do not disturb so that nobody could get through, because that is just for me and her. And if there's an emergency happening, as soon as that time is over and I turn my do not disturb off, I will see that notification. But then also recognizing what constitutes as an emergency. Not everything, if the building is on fire, I can't do anything about it, right? The fire department's going to go take care of that. There's nothing that I can do. But if there is a student struggling with suicidal ideation, or a staff member, or whatever the case may be that falls within my realm, but really clearly defining that was important for me so that I wasn't getting contacted constantly. Because for me, it wasn't necessarily parents that were reaching out at 24/7. It was staff members that needed support with parents or whatever the case may be. So really just recognizing, how can I support my staff? In what ways? And how can I clearly communicate that in a really kind and compassionate way? So for me, it was telling that story about my daughter. Like, hey, I really want to support you all in all of the things that you do. But this is what happened and this is what I learned from it. And so this is what I need to do to be present. Another thing that has recently come up for me is I was working with a group of BCBAs in Southern Indiana, and they were talking about how they were really happy because they had developed some close friendships with coworkers. And so they were starting to go out to dinner with their coworkers. They had things after school that they would do. Can you guess what they talked about while they were at dinner with their coworkers? Work. Yeah. So they just talked about work the whole time. And guess how they felt when they left? No better than when they came in. So I get it. There are times when we need to debrief and we need to talk about work. But one, if you're in a public setting, that gets tricky because of confidentiality and you never know who's around you. And also, if you need to talk about work because you need to debrief, I get it. Set a timer so that your whole time, dinner with friends is supposed to fulfill you, not to leave you feeling depleted. So set a timer and be like, okay, after this timer goes off, we're done. Whatever it is that helps you to limit those conversations. All right, we are going to shift into just doing an activity together, and I'm going to share how I embedded this throughout my day to make counseling sustainable for me. So if you'll just play along with me and put both feet flat on the ground. And if you feel safe, you can close your eyes, just put your hands in your lap or resting on the desk in front of you. And I just want you to imagine a place that when you walk in, you immediately feel the stress just melt away. Maybe it's the beach, maybe it's a grandparent's house, maybe it's the mountains, whatever that place is. Just really picture in your mind what that image looks like in front of you. What do you normally see while you're there? Is there anything that you normally smell? Are there any sounds that you normally hear? If you were to sit your hands down around you, is there anything that you could touch or feel? And if so, what does it feel like? And maybe there's something that you even taste. Maybe it's in the air. Whatever it is, just spend a moment in that image, noticing what you see, what you smell, what you hear, what you can feel. And when you're ready, just blink your eyes back open and you can come back to the space. Typically, when I'm in a space of people, you can feel the energy shift. It's like, oh, we've got all this high energy up here. And then just in a minute of guided visualization, we can bring it back down. And research shows that this is one of the most efficient strategies to use when you are feeling really overwhelmed. So this is what I did. And you might think it's weird or crazy. I don't care. The only time during the day that I had to myself where nobody else can interrupt me. Does anybody want to guess where it was? In the bathroom. Yeah, because not even while I was eating my lunch, right? If I'm eating my lunch, most people would pop their head in. I'm sorry to interrupt you while you're eating your lunch, but no. When I was in the restroom, nobody can interrupt me. Nobody can come in. So that was my reminder. And it's not like I got to go very often throughout the day anyways. So my reminder was when I walked through the bathroom door, I would pause for a minute and just do a quick guided visualization because that was my time to recharge. And if I didn't do that, I could feel it throughout the day. It was just like my stress just kept increasing because the truth is kids are dealing with really hard things. And when you're picking up all of that trauma throughout the day, if you're not taking a moment to reset, it just builds until you become like that volcano. All right, there's a bit.ly on here and a QR code. So this reflection sheet is in this Padlet. If you would like to actually fill it out, you can. But I would just like to take a minute to think through. A lot of you shared really great things that you're doing to set boundaries earlier, like not having email on your phone. I don't have email on my phone anymore either. I did have the Outlook app, so if I needed to get into email quickly, I could, but I didn't have notifications coming on it. That was one thing that I did for me. But what is one thing that you could do for you? Maybe it's on this list, maybe it's not, going forward to really help set boundaries as you're moving throughout your workday. I'm going to give you just a minute to think about that. If you would like to drop it in the chat, you can. Or you can fill it out on the reflection sheet, whatever feels best for you. Okay, just for the sake of time, we're going to keep moving. Okay. I love that idea of posting your schedule on your door so everybody knows. I would share my calendar electronically just because it would help people keep up with it, not because people were trying to manage me, micromanage me. My admin team was really incredible, but it was more so like if somebody came to ask me to do something and I already had a counseling lesson planned, I could say, I'd love to help you with that. But on my calendar, I already have this scheduled. So what is a different way that I can help? I love that idea, Erin. Putting a sign on the door and saying, I'm in a meeting, but put your name down if you need me. Awesome. All right, we're going to talk about habits for a second. What is the number one New Year's resolution every single year?
To get healthy.
Get healthy, lose weight. Yeah. Exercise more. Yes. So everybody signs up, and gyms really enjoy, I think, everybody signing up on January 1st. They have discounts. There's a $0 initial fee, all of those things. It's the number one New Year's resolution, at least in the US, every single year. So what happens because people lose steam or whatever the case may be? What day do people typically stop going to the gym? Does anybody know? It's usually the 12th day. On the 12th day is when we usually fall off. Does anybody know why? Yep. That schedule went wonky. I got it. Yeah, a lot of you are saying it's not a habit yet. So that's the truth. We are habitually, humans work out of habits. So if you aren't in a habit of already going to the gym, and something happens with your schedule, or you wake up late, or you're not feeling 100%, it's easy to just stop going because we're not already in the habit of doing it. So what we're going to talk about as we move forward, making it sustainable, is all about developing better habits. So these are my grandparents right here. They were farmers in Hardin County, Kentucky. I don't know if I saw one person I know from Hardin County. I don't know if there's any other Hardin County people in here. super loving, but they were always praised. I can't tell you how many times people would stop me if they knew them and say, they're such hard workers. They're such hard workers. And then my mom learned that too, right? She watched them grow up as farmers, and my mom learned to be a hard worker. And so I don't know how many people would stop me and praise my mom and my dad for being hard workers. And I didn't know it, that I had absorbed that naturally. And so when I started as an employee, as an EBD teacher and then a counselor, I made myself accessible 24 hours a day because I also wanted to be a hard worker, right? I wanted to do all of the right things. And a counselor at one of the last presentations said, I love my job. I don't want to do the bare minimum. And I get it. Here's the thing. My grandparents set a really great example for hard work, and then it transitioned to my mom, but what it didn't transition to was showing healthy habits. And my mom, a couple of weeks ago, well, let me back up a little bit. She was kind of a public figure. She was an elected official. And when all of us left the house, so we went off to college, she didn't have all of the things that used to keep her busy. So she, in a completely different stage of life, not having a little one or somebody to care for, it was easy for her to just stay at work and catch up on all of the things. But it ended up being 6, 7 o'clock every single day because she didn't have anything she was rushing to get home to. During COVID, it got even worse because it was an election year. And all of the things that were on her plate, there were so many things happening. Her office wasn't open. So she started working 16-hour days almost every single day of the week. And I'm telling you this because she's not a person who experienced burnout in the sense that she would say, I really need a vacation or I really need a break. She loved her job and she loved what she was doing, but it decreased the healthy habits, the other things that she could do for herself. And so it's ended up being a very physical limitation for her now. Just a couple of weeks ago, she ended up in the hospital because her body is just worn down. And so regardless of whether you love your job and you're not feeling like the stress of burnout, all of the things, the habits that we have a larger impact on us. So if you're feeling the impacts of burnout, that's one thing. But if you're not, and you're just like, I love my job and I want to work all the time, there's also burnout in that. So I just wanted to transcend those like typical beliefs about burnout, that there's still an impact, that all of the things we do every single day matter, like eating and sleeping. How many of us stay up forever answering emails and then we get into it and then it's midnight before we know it? If you think about having a heavy meal or something that has like a lot of like fried food in the middle of the day, maybe it's not even fried food, just something that's not like the best for you, what happens an hour or two later? You crash or you get sleepy. Yeah. So when that happens and you're sleepy and you're tired and somebody comes in with a ton of trauma they want to just put at your feet, you don't have the full capacity to deal with it. And so we're not going to talk a ton about eating habits, but just something to think through about how something little like that can really impact our ability to be able to support. As we go through, we are going to practice strategies, but more than that, it's thinking about how can we actually use those throughout the day. So you probably don't need me to tell you or show you or practice with you some breathing strategies or guided visualizations or some of the things that we're going to do today. But how can we make them a habit? We already know all the tools to use most of the time. How can we make them and thread them throughout our day? Maybe it's that you have a reminder set on your phone. Maybe for you, it's also, as soon as I walk through the restroom, I'm going to practice a strategy. So maybe you use that as a strategy. Maybe it's that you get a habit tracking app. I don't think I can pull it up and show it on my phone, but there is a habit app. No, I won't show the screen. That allows you to set which habits that you want to develop And then I'm a really big checkoff person, so you get to check it off when you do it. And then it will show you kind of at the end of the week an overview of what did you follow through with. And if you didn't do great that week, that's okay, but you can see it. And then I've got to set more alarms for next week or whatever the case may be. And then here's the other thing. It's easy to try to use strategies when you feel really overwhelmed, or do things when you really need it the most. But the truth is, if you're not practicing them every single day, you don't build that habit. And then it's not as natural when you need it. You don't just fall into it. Okay, so grounding is really important, which is why I always ask people to put both feet flat on the ground. But I'm just going to share with you how I embedded this throughout my day because I needed it. So we had morning announcements that were televised on Google Meet every single morning. And so I got to join. And because I knew I needed to start my day off as kids are coming through the door, I don't know if you all stand out and greet kids each morning like I did. But as kids would come through the door, there were tears, or there were already things that were happening, or so much would happen within those first 10 minutes of the day that I was already feeling like, whew, I got to get it together before we actually start the day, right? The bell hasn't even rang and I need to get it together. So I did this because I needed it. So during those morning announcements, I would ask kids to put their feet flat on the ground and we would take 3 deep breaths together. Doing that allowed all of the kids to just kind of take a breath and settle, but it helped me to settle so that I could be intentional about how I was starting my day. So really quickly, just for fun, if you'll put both feet flat on the ground, and you can find your anchor if you want, put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Just take 2 to 3 deep breaths in and out on your own. Just something as simple as that can really help you shift and start your day or reset your day off more grounded. Right. In the chat, if there is something that you feel like might help you to use as a reminder, maybe it's a habit app, maybe it's alerts on your phone. What do you think that you could do strategically? Maybe it's morning announcements, adding in something that you need, or maybe it's starting counseling lessons with something you need. Whatever it is, how can you, or what can you use as a reminder to really make sure that you're doing things to reset and ground your energy?
Hey, Laura, we did have a question in the chat for you. They want to know what is the app that you use to help with habits?
That is a great question. So the app that I have is just called Habit, and it's pink with a white check mark in the middle. It is free. I don't like to use paid apps. There are paid things that you can do in the app, but I've never needed them. So that's my favorite one to use just because I like the ability to name whatever habit that I want, to schedule reminders, and then also to see that weekly and even monthly view of how well I've been doing. Class change bells as a reminder. I like that. Outlook reminders. Love it. All right. Yes, to establish routines. That's the best way to build a habit. Very cool, Rachel. I'm not sure what a Hoberman sphere is, but I would love to know more. Oh, okay. I always called it a breath ball. I didn't know it had a name. All right. One of the really cool things about being part of JCPS was that I had a large network of other counselors. There were a ton of us, right? I think in elementary, there were like 100 of us. But I know that that's not the case in every district. So one of the things that I feel like is really important is using your network. We spend so much time creating resources that we need, like whether it's suicide prevention lessons or healthy homework habits, or maybe it's attendance, whatever it is. We all spend so much time developing things for lessons. And there are great things out there, like Counselor Carrie has a ton. There's so much on Teachers Pay Teachers. But we are doing a lot of similar work across the state of Kentucky, maybe in neighboring districts. Maybe there are other counselors in your district that you could partner with. How can you use that community or that connection that you have with them? When we start to share the amount of time that it takes for us to do things that we're already planning on doing decreases significantly, because we don't have that creation period, right? We don't have to recreate the wheel. I will just share, I did do this Wellness Wednesday email, and some of you on here might get them, but I started doing this a few years ago. And when one of my counselor colleagues asked me if I would share it with them, I was like, sure. I hadn't initially intended for that to happen, but I was happy to share it. Before I knew it, we were sharing so many things. Like, one counselor had created this middle school transition night to talk to families about how to apply for middle schools and JCPS, which is tricky. And it saved me so much time. So the more that we started sharing, the easier things got, because I wasn't having to recreate things every single year. So if you don't already have a network, and I guess being at a statewide conference and seeing the co-ops is really cool, because there are already kind of built-in networks. How can we utilize those more so that we're sharing to decrease the time that we're spending on creating so many things? And then if you need help, reach out before it gets to a 10. All right, we're going to skip that for now. All right, ask for help when you need it. Practice what you preach. And Michelle, Dr. Searcy kind of said the same thing earlier. A lot of times we are the worst at taking our own advice. And I will just share, when Dr. Sweeney's group came through and he asked me that question, who's supporting you? It was at a time that like a big T trauma had just happened, and I had been off work for a few days and I had just come back to work. But in that time, I realized that I needed to ask for help. I talked to so many families about getting mental health support and services. I waited until I absolutely needed it to make that happen for myself. And when I finally signed up with the therapist, I was meeting with him for the first time, and he said, well, you probably wouldn't believe it, but most of the people that I meet with are principals and counselors. And I was like, what? Other people really do this? Right? Because I had been like the last to take my own advice. But don't be afraid to ask for help, and really and truly don't wait till it gets to a 10. So many districts have an employee assistance program. So if your district has that, oftentimes there are 2 to 3 free therapy sessions, so you don't even have to go look for one. It's already kind of built in that network for you, and then they can help you find if you need more than that. But really and truly prioritize your own mental health. Dr. Searcy said earlier, if you leave your counseling role, you can be replaced. And it's true. Your family can't replace you if something goes wrong. And the truth is, we are all taking in so much secondary trauma, because the issues and the things that our kids and our families are experiencing are heavy, and they're a lot. So don't let it just all pile up and explode. All right, I am going to share box breathing. You've probably all done this, but I love this because I would, when I needed it again, in counseling lessons, a lot of times, a lot of classrooms, teachers would let their kids draw on their desk with dry erase markers because they wipe off really easily. Maybe they don't in yours, in your building, and that's okay. But the box breathing strategy is one of the easiest things, easiest breathing strategies to make us be present. And it's because of the hold on the bottom. It is not natural in our breathing pattern to hold at the bottom. So I would have kids trace it with their finger so that I could do the same. And we would breathe in for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds, out for 3 seconds, hold for 3 seconds at the bottom. And that hold is what makes you be present right now. So if you will, let's just go through one round of that so you can feel that hold at the bottom if you've not done this in a while or if you've not done this all together. All right, let's take a deep breath in for 1, 2, 3. Hold for 1, 2, 3. Out for 1, 2, 3. Hold for 1, 2, 3. Do you feel that hold at the bottom, how unnatural that is? And it forces you to be back and
Dr.
present.
Donnelly,
So
just a heads up, we have 2 minutes left.
thank you. So that breathing strategy was something that I would incorporate into counseling lessons because I needed it. All right. I'm just going to end on this. Focus on the good. If you are not living under a rock, you have probably heard about the Taylor Swift and NFL controversy, about how much Taylor Swift is being shown on the screen. Whatever you believe about it, it doesn't matter. That's not the point of this. An analyst broke down a 3-hour and 45-minute broadcast segment. And in that 3-hour and 45 broadcast segment, Taylor was shown 20, like we're best friends, Taylor. She was shown 24 seconds out of that 3-hour and 45-minute broadcast. You see how much time that was in terms of seconds? Let me ask you this. How often do we let 24 seconds ruin an entire day? A simple conversation in the front office, a stumped toe when we get up out of bed in the morning, a car that cuts you off while you're driving, whatever it is. There are so many things that happen in such a short amount of time that we let completely disrupt an entire day. So just think about that as you're moving forward. And if you notice yourself getting stuck in that, I'm really fixated on this really small little thing and I need to move on. No, just notice and recognize, and then see if you can focus on shifting something else, focusing on the good. And a lot of times when we are in this feeling of burnout, it seems like everything around us is going bad. But the truth is, there are still great things that you might have about your job. Maybe it's that you get a paycheck so you can pay your bills. Maybe it's that you really truly love working with the students that you're working with. So I'm just going to suggest, throw this out there. At some point today, take a minute just to journal. What are some things that are going really well with your job? Because we all need those reminders from time to time, and not in a Pollyanna sense, like just any little thing, but truly, what's really great that's going on right now? Because when we can start to focus and shift on the good, it takes away that little bitty 24-second thing that happened. All right, I really appreciate you all. I'm so sorry I ran out of time. But if you need anything from me, if there's any way that I can help, this is my contact information. I hope that you will have an incredible rest of the National School Counseling Week because you deserve it.
Dr. Donnelly, thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Just listening to you instantly soothes me. Like, it's just so calming. And I appreciate the work that you're doing to support our educators throughout the state. She really is an amazing resource. If you guys ever want to reach out, she does great work. And everyone that uses her always comes back with lots of great things to share. All right, we are going to switch over to the next part of our presentation. So what we are going to do is we are going to transition to breakout rooms. Don't do that yet. We're going to transition to breakout rooms. These are the breakout rooms that are available. I'm also going to drop it in the chat. Give me just a second so that you can see it. So you can go to any of these. They are going to start in 10 minutes. Now I'm going to give you kind of a run of show for the rest of the day for our last hour together. You're going to go to your breakout room and the meeting will conclude from your breakout session. So when your facilitator is done, that'll be the end of today's programming. Want to say thank you for joining in. Know that it's hard to do that, especially during the busy work day, but I appreciate you all taking time to step away and join us for National School Counseling Week and this month's Cadre meeting. Would love to see what you're doing in your schools and hear about some of the great things going on in our counseling departments throughout Kentucky. that is my X or Twitter handle. Would love for you guys to follow me. I'll follow you back and tag me in things that are going on throughout the state so that I can keep in touch with you. Okay, so I am going to open these breakout rooms. And y'all, we've not done this before, so we might have to practice a little grace, but we're going to go into these breakout rooms, and you're going to click on the one that you want to attend. Give me just a moment. Okay, I'm going to open all the rooms now. It'll start in 10 minutes. Well, it'll start at 11:10-ish. So you can choose your breakout room, and they have now been opened. So you can go down to the bottom of your screen, click on more if it's there, and then you can go to breakout room and choose whichever one you want to go to. I'm going to stay back in this main room. So if you need any help, I'm here to answer any questions that you have. But again, thank you. And I hope you all have a wonderful National School Counseling Week.